Hello everyone. I am a 33-year-old man, and today I am compelled to share a deeply personal and painful story that has significantly impacted my life. Before I recount my experiences, I would like to pose a thought-provoking question. What would you do if you unexpectedly walked in on your wife, a person in whom you placed your complete trust, engaged in an intimate embrace with two other men on your own bed? My journey with my wife, Tracy, who is currently 29 years old, began in an unexpected yet delightful setting, the movies. I attended a screening of a newly released film with my friends, and to my surprise, Tracy was there with her own group of friends. That chance meeting sparked an instant connection between us, a connection that blossomed into a romantic relationship shortly thereafter. We spent the following year getting to know each other and nurturing our bond, culminating in our wedding, which felt like the natural progression of our relationship. In the early days of our marriage, I experienced a profound sense of gratitude for having Tracy as my partner. We genuinely enjoyed each other's company, and the happiness we shared was palpable. As her husband, I dedicated myself to supporting her aspirations and encouraging her personal growth. The first 2 years of our marriage were characterized by strength and mutual respect. Tracy's qualities, her sweet disposition, unwavering support, incredible intelligence, culinary skills, and charming personality, made her the perfect partner in my eyes. Above all, her commitment to honesty was a trait I valued immensely. I could always trust her to speak the truth. At that time, Tracy was working at a fast food restaurant to earn an income, while I was focused on my career as a graphic designer, specializing in the creation of banners, billboards, and various related designs. Although both of us contributed fairly to our household finances, I assumed the bulk of the financial responsibilities because Tracy was directing her earnings toward pursuing her dreams. Tracy had confided in me about her childhood aspiration to become an actress, a dream that was met with disapproval from her parents, who pressed her to follow a more conventional career path deemed more respectable. Understanding the significance of pursuing one's passion, I assured Tracy of my unwavering support for her acting dreams. I could relate to her desire to follow a path that ignited her spirit, as I had my own unfulfilled career aspirations. Therefore, I became her staunch supporter, encouraging her to participate in drama clubs and seize various acting opportunities. We even formulated plans for her to attend a theater arts academy once we had saved enough money. Tracy's natural talent for acting was another compelling reason for my support. She had developed impressive skills even before our relationship began. I admired her dedication, as she spent countless hours studying performance through courses and online resources. It was evident to me that she was committed to honing her craft, and I had no desire to hinder her path to success. We had mutually decided to postpone having children so that Tracy could focus entirely on her acting career and her anticipated enrollment in the academy. We envisioned starting our family only after she had completed her studies. We believed that by then she would have secured significant roles in plays, dramas, or even films, thanks to her exceptional talent. Our discussions about her acting ambitions took place during the honeymoon phase of our marriage, a period marked by love, affection, and mutual respect. There were no conflicts or serious disputes. Tracy treated me with kindness and consideration, embodying the ideal partner. Throughout that first year, Tracy diligently applied for numerous volunteer roles, immersing herself in opportunities that would allow her to showcase her skills. Unfortunately, her efforts met with little success, and as time went on, she faced mounting frustration. She was disappointed due to the lack of responses. It was a challenging period for her, leading her to contemplate shifting her focus to her job at the fast food restaurant. As I reflect on those early years, I recognize the dreams we shared and the commitment we made to support each other. However, what would unfold later would test the very foundation of our relationship in ways I could never have anticipated. I maintained a steadfast commitment to encouraging my wife, relentlessly urging her to persevere and not lose sight of her dreams, even during the challenging times. Fortunately, our efforts bore fruit several months after we celebrated our first anniversary. Tracy received a much-anticipated response regarding one of her job applications. She had applied for a role in a play, and the theater was interested in bringing on new actors and actresses. When she read the email that informed her of this opportunity, Tracy was filled with an overwhelming sense of excitement, and I could hardly contain my happiness for her. The icing on the cake was that the auditions were taking place in our hometown. This allowed her ample time to prepare adequately. On the day of her audition, Tracy shone brightly and passed with flying colors, ultimately landing the part. Her ecstatic reaction when she shared the wonderful news with me was priceless. The joy radiated from her, and it was a moment I will always cherish. Adding to this delightful turn of events was the fact that they would be compensating her for her time, and most of the rehearsals were conveniently scheduled for weekends. Initially, I did not foresee the extent of Tracy's transformation once she commenced her rehearsals. In the early weeks, our relationship seemed unaffected. Our communication remained robust, and we continued to engage in our usual activities together. The only notable change was that our weekends were starting to have less of us together, as her rehearsals consumed her Saturdays and Sundays. Tracy would wake up early to manage household chores, prepare meals, and then head off to her rehearsals. She would return home in the evening. Although I was somewhat uncomfortable with this emerging routine, I chose not to voice my concerns for fear of undermining her inaugural professional opportunity. Additionally, I recognized that her weekend earnings already surpassed her weekly income, making this new venture economically sound. As time progressed, however, Tracy and I began to drift apart. In a bid to fill the growing void, I turned to video games and reconnected with some old friends. These were individuals I had known since high school and college, and I felt comfortable sharing my thoughts and feelings about Tracy's burgeoning acting career. I also shared her increasingly busy schedule with them. During one of our conversations, a friend named Eric advised me to keep a close watch on Tracy, citing rumors he had heard regarding actresses engaging in questionable behavior to secure roles. I dismissed his warnings, firmly believing that Tracy's talent and integrity would preclude her from resorting to such tactics. Time moved on, and my friend ceased to mention Tracy after I brushed off Eric's concerns. However, the warning lingered in my subconscious, and gradually, I started to behave differently around Tracy. I found myself asking her peculiar questions that I would not have considered previously. When she picked up on the shift in my demeanor and the odd inquiries I was making, Tracy confronted me. This prompted me to open up, apologize, and reveal the nature of Eric's comments. In response to my revelations, Tracy merely laughed and reassured me of her unwavering love. She stated that she could never betray me and regarded me as the best husband in the world, insisting that only a foolish and ungrateful person would cheat on someone like me. This declaration brought me a sense of inner peace, and for a time, I genuinely believed that our bond was unbreakable. I was unaware that Tracy had been excelling in her most practiced art, acting. She had begun deceiving me long before that conversation took place. In the ensuing weeks, Tracy underwent a profound transformation that was difficult to articulate. Our conversation started to feel increasingly forced, and the eagerness she once had while returning home faded. In previous times, she would have regaled me with stories from rehearsals, sharing every detail as if she were unveiling a masterpiece. I had come to know the names, appearances, and personalities of her fellow actors through her enthusiastic recounting. However, that vibrant exchange came to a sudden stop. Alongside this emotional withdrawal, Tracy adopted a defensive attitude, taking umbrage at nearly everything I said, even old jokes that once elicited her laughter. She began to interpret my attempts at humor as personal attacks or references to her character. The familiar closeness we had built over time seemed to erode, leaving me disoriented. I maintained a steadfast commitment to encouraging my wife, relentlessly urging her to persevere and not lose sight of her dreams, even during the challenging times. Fortunately, our efforts bore fruit several months after we celebrated our first anniversary. Tracy received a much-anticipated response regarding one of her job applications. She had applied for a role in a play, and the theater was interested in bringing on new actors and actresses. When she read the email that informed her of this opportunity, Tracy was filled with an overwhelming sense of excitement, and I could hardly contain my happiness for her. The icing on the cake was that the auditions were taking place in our hometown, allowing her ample time to prepare adequately. On the day of her audition, Tracy shone brightly and passed with flying colors, ultimately landing the part. Her ecstatic reaction when she shared the wonderful news with me was priceless. The joy radiated from her, and it was a moment I will always cherish. Adding to this delightful turn of events was the fact that they would be compensating her for her time, and most of the rehearsals were conveniently scheduled for weekends. Initially, I did not foresee the extent of Tracy's transformation once she commenced her rehearsals. In the early weeks, our relationship seemed unaffected. Our communication remained robust, and we continued to engage in our usual activities together. The only notable change was that our weekends were starting to have less of us together, as her rehearsals consumed her Saturdays and Sundays. Tracy would wake up early to manage household chores, prepare meals, and then head off to her rehearsals, returning home in the evening. Although I was somewhat uncomfortable with this emerging routine, I chose not to voice my concerns for fear of undermining her inaugural professional opportunity. Additionally, I recognized that her weekend earnings already surpassed her weekly income, making this new venture economically sound. As time progressed, however, Tracy and I began to drift apart. In a bid to fill the growing void, I turned to video games and reconnected with some old friends. These were individuals I had known since high school and college, and I felt comfortable sharing my thoughts and feelings about Tracy's burgeoning acting career and her increasingly busy schedule with them. During one of our conversations, a friend named Eric advised me to keep a close watch on Tracy, citing rumors he had heard regarding actresses engaging in questionable behavior to secure roles. I dismissed his warnings, firmly believing that Tracy's talent and integrity would preclude her from resorting to such tactics. Time moved on, and my friend ceased to mention Tracy after I brushed off Eric's concerns. However, the warning lingered in my subconscious, and gradually, I started to behave differently around Tracy. I found myself asking her peculiar questions that I would not have considered previously. When she picked up on the shift in my demeanor and the odd inquiries I was making, Tracy confronted me. This prompted me to open up, apologize, and reveal the nature of Eric's comments. In response to my revelations, Tracy merely laughed and reassured me of her unwavering love, stating that she could never betray me. She regarded me as the best husband in the world, insisting that only a foolish and ungrateful person would cheat on someone like me. This declaration brought me a sense of inner peace, and for a time, I genuinely believed that our bond was unbreakable, unaware that, unbeknownst to me, Tracy had been excelling in her most practiced art, acting. She had begun deceiving me long before that conversation took place. In the ensuing weeks, Tracy underwent a profound transformation that was difficult to articulate. Our conversation started to feel increasingly forced, and the eagerness she once had while returning home faded. In previous times, she would have regaled me with stories from rehearsals, sharing every detail as if she were unveiling a masterpiece. I had come to know the names, appearances, and personalities of her fellow actors through her enthusiastic recounting, making us feel incredibly connected. However, that vibrant exchange came to a sudden stop. Alongside this emotional withdrawal, Tracy adopted a defensive attitude, taking umbrage at nearly everything I said, even old jokes that once elicited her laughter. She began to interpret my attempts at humor as personal attacks or references to her character. The familiar closeness we had built over time seemed to erode, leaving me disoriented and questioning the foundation of our relationship. Tracy underwent a notable transformation in her wardrobe choices, opting for increasingly revealing dresses, particularly on days designated for rehearsals. Despite my repeated attempts to voice my concerns regarding her attire, she consistently dismissed my objections. She argued that her clothing choices were stylish and modern, suggesting that my perspective was outdated. During this period, I assumed her motivations were simply to keep pace with her fellow actresses, many of whom embraced more fashionable looks. I recognized her competitive nature, especially regarding fashion, which led me to dismiss the idea that her behavior might indicate infidelity. However, my apprehensions deepened when I noticed her frequent changes in hairstyle, seemingly every week. Additionally, she spent an excessive amount of time on the phone with a man she described as a fellow actor. A particular incident that transpired one day left me truly unsettled. When I expressed my displeasure regarding her actions, she raised her voice at me and stormed out of the room, an unprecedented reaction that triggered a realization: I had to take decisive action. Later that evening, I confided in friends who had come over to visit. They speculated that Tracy might already be cheating on me, despite my reluctance to accept such a notion. Even with the mounting evidence of her changing behavior, I found it difficult to believe she was unfaithful. After all, I had made significant sacrifices to support her journey toward success. I argued my position, suggesting that Tracy could simply be experiencing a challenging phase and was venting her frustrations toward me. My friends contended that my love for her was clouding my judgment, leading them to recommend hiring a private investigator if I truly wanted to uncover the truth about Tracy's possible infidelity. Initially reticent about having someone surveil her, I ultimately conceded due to the distress her changing behavior caused me. The following week, I engaged a private investigator I found online and instructed him to follow Tracy for the duration of a week. On the third day of the investigation, Tracy did not return home following her rehearsals. When she eventually arrived home the next day, she claimed that she had attended a birthday celebration at a club for one of her fellow actresses. She explained that she chose to stay at a nearby hotel with them, believing it was safer than traveling a considerable distance late at night. What struck me as particularly suspicious was her failure to inform me about the party beforehand. I had been trying to reach her on her phone until 3 a.m. When she finally answered, she justified her lack of communication by saying she had not heard her phone ring due to the loud music at the club. She also falsely asserted that she had mentioned the birthday party to me, claiming I had not been paying attention. Despite her explanations, I was plagued by doubts regarding her story. However, I held on to the belief that the truth would eventually surface through the private investigator's efforts. For the next 7 days, I experienced a tense silence, receiving no updates from the investigator. It was only on my way home after visiting my parents that I finally received a call from him. He informed me he had gathered evidence that warranted my immediate attention. Instead of returning home, I redirected my path to meet him at the agreed location. Tracy remained unaware of my sudden change of plans. We had spoken the day before, and I had told her I would be returning on Monday morning to spend more quality time with my parents. But now I was back a day earlier. When I arrived to meet the private investigator, he presented me with overwhelming evidence that completely shattered my sense of security. He had gathered photographs and videos of Tracy with a blonde man, who ultimately turned out to be her lover. The evidence depicted them sharing intimate moments in both Tracy's car and his, as well as capturing their time spent shopping together and dining out. A video particularly impactful was from the night she alleged she attended the club for her friend's birthday. It revealed that she had spent the entirety of the night with him. They engaged in a night out before departing around 10 p.m. to head to his apartment, where she remained for the rest of the night. This revelation meant she had indeed seen my calls but had chosen to ignore them deliberately. I was left in a state of profound shock upon uncovering Tracy's betrayal. She had previously appeared to be someone with whom I could envision building a promising future, but that hope was irrevocably shattered when the private investigator unveiled all the incriminating photographs and videos. He informed me that he had followed Tracy that evening, gathering evidence of her infidelity. To my astonishment, I learned that she was at my home with her affair partner before he reached out to me. A wave of intense anger instantly engulfed me, an emotion so overwhelming that I felt a powerful urge to destroy something in my path. The fury coursing through my veins made it impossible for me to drive, so the private investigator took the wheel, transporting me back to my house. Upon our arrival, a startling sight awaited me, a blue Toyota Venza parked conspicuously in my driveway. The very moment I laid eyes on that vehicle, I recognized it, the same one featured in the images and videos he had shown me. My heart sank as I realized with absolute certainty that Tracy was inside, entangled with her affair partner. I couldn't recall whether I had actually consented to have the investigator follow me that evening. However, the next thing I vividly remember is crossing the threshold of my home, leading to our bedroom. As I swung open the bedroom door, the scene that unfolded before my eyes was nothing short of shocking. Tracy was in bed with 2 men, engaged in an intimate act, entirely oblivious to the storm that was about to break upon them. The tall, blonde man was dominating the scene, while the other man was also involved in the betrayal. My emotions erupted in a flood of rage, leaving me paralyzed for a brief moment as I grappled with the intensity of my feelings. Dressed in revealing lingerie, Tracy's hands were bound to the bed, a sight that invoked both anger and confusion in me. When she noticed my presence, she attempted to rise, but her movements were restricted by the restraints. In an impulsive reaction, I lunged at the blonde man, while the other man hastily scrambled to gather his clothes, fleeing the scene in a panic. Fortunately, the private investigator was right beside me, intervening just in time to prevent me from succumbing to the violent urges that threatened to consume me. Throughout this chaotic encounter, Tracy remained bound, desperately pleading with me to understand. She insisted that I had misconstrued the situation, claiming that she was rehearsing for a play with the men. Her absurd justification only added fuel to the fire of my rage, and I fought the temptation to unleash my anger upon her in her vulnerable state. Instead, I left the room, instructing her to exit my house immediately. After leaving, accompanied by the investigator, he revealed that he had recorded the entire incident. As he handed me the footage, I was overwhelmed with conflicting emotions. Unsure of how to proceed with what I now possessed, that night, I sought refuge at a friend's place, grappling with deep embarrassment and betrayal. The reality that my suspicions about Tracy and her newfound acting career were accurate weighed heavily on me. The heart-wrenching discovery that she had engaged in a 3-way encounter in our bedroom, in our own bed, was a thought that haunted me. The following morning, upon returning home, I found Tracy still inside, having skipped her rehearsals, fully aware of her wrongdoing. When I confronted her, my anger surged once more, leaving me with no choice but to evict her. I threw her belongings onto the lawn, unceremoniously casting her out. Tracy, in her desperation, pleaded for a chance to explain herself, insisting that I was making a terrible mistake. She urged me to let her clarify the circumstances. For nearly an hour, she stood outside, calling my name and beseeching me to allow her back in. However, her initial display of remorse soon transformed into abusive name-calling and defiance before she ultimately left. This distressing incident unfolded just last week, and I have only now begun to find the strength to share it. Since the day I discovered Tracy with those two men, I have felt profoundly disoriented, struggling to come to terms with a reality that unfolded right under my nose. I had never indulged Tracy unduly nor acted as a pushover. We shared financial responsibilities, and she managed most of the household chores, while I maintained my emotional composure throughout our relationship. I reflect on this because I have heard countless stories of men overlooking warning signs. In hindsight, I recognize that I should have initiated an investigation when our communication began to falter, particularly when she started upgrading her wardrobe. Yet, should marriage really entail harboring suspicions about a spouse's evolving clothing choices or communication shifts stemming from work-related fatigue? It is a notion that does not sit well with me. What exacerbates my frustration is her incessant attempts to reach me since I ordered her to leave. I find myself contemplating the most appropriate form of retaliation, even considering the possibility of revealing the recorded video I possess to her. Update 1. Hello everyone, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude for your comments. I'm genuinely pleased to see that none of you think my feelings or reactions are too extreme in this whole situation. One person mentioned that I should look into the second guy featured in the video, and I took that advice to heart. You won't believe what I discovered about him. It turns out he is currently in a relationship with Tracy's director. Not only that, but Tracy's director identifies as not straight. Just imagine the level of anger and sense of betrayal when he finds out that Tracy has been engaging in an affair with his boyfriend. Speaking of Tracy, she decided to drop by my place 3 days ago, and let me tell you, she looked utterly miserable. Her eyelids were swollen from crying, and it was clear that she had been through an emotional wringer. Unfortunately for her, my friends were over when she arrived, and while they didn't say a word to her, their body language and eye rolls spoke volumes. It was evident they were irritated by her presence, and as she stood there pleading with me, I noticed her distress only grew as she saw me having a good time with my friends. In a moment of frustration, she yelled at me, asking, "So, Mike, is this how it's going to be? You'll let your friends disrespect your wife over something so trivial?" Throughout her dramatic plea on the porch, I chose to remain silent and stayed inside, listening to her. However, when she made that audacious statement, it pushed me to the brink, and I stormed out of the house. I was ready to confront her face to face. Luckily, my friend stepped in at that moment, probably sensing that things could escalate to a level I didn't want to reach, especially with the thought of potential legal consequences hovering over me. Tracy made a scene as she brought up all the promises we had made to each other, reminiscing about how I had vowed to grow old with her. I was seething with anger, but even in my fury, I felt unable to take any concrete action. After waiting in vain for my response, she asked about the theater arts academy that I had previously promised to support her in. I was tempted to tell her she should seek help and support from her affair partner but decided that I just wanted her to leave. So, I kept silent until she finally left, clearly embarrassed and ashamed. I've already contacted a divorce attorney, and as soon as the necessary documents are prepared, he will send them to her for her signature. As for getting back at her, I am taking all your advice into account. I've come to the realization that while sharing the video of her with her director may not completely destroy her career, it will definitely place a significant dent in all the hard work she's put in over the last few months. With the knowledge that Tracy betrayed me with her director's boyfriend, my motivation to send that video to him has only intensified. Update 2. Hello everyone, I'm excited to share this update because the situation with Tracy has evolved in a way I didn't expect. After my last update, it took me 2 weeks to track down her director online, but I finally found him. He's a newcomer in the film industry who's been making a name for himself, so I felt it was important to reach out to him. We arranged to meet, and he showed up with a sense of eagerness, clearly wanting to hear what I had to say about his partner and one of his actors. When we met on the day we agreed upon, I went straight to the point without wasting time on small talk. We exchanged greetings, and then I presented him with the video showing his boyfriend, the blonde guy, and Tracy. His reaction was heartbreaking. He was deeply disappointed to the point where tears ran down his face. He confided in me that he had suspected something was going on between his boyfriend and one of the cast members, but he never had definitive proof. He also mentioned that his boyfriend had cheated on him before, and although he forgave him for past mistakes, attributing them to alcohol, he clearly felt wrecked by this latest revelation. Honestly, I wasn't overly concerned about his boyfriend's actions. My main interest was to find out what he planned to do regarding Tracy and her affair partner. When I asked him about it, he admitted he hadn't really thought about his next steps yet. I took the opportunity to urge him not to let them off easily, particularly given the betrayal Tracy had inflicted on him. In short, he ultimately decided to fire both Tracy and her blonde affair partner from their roles in his project. Although I'm not entirely clear on whether he ended his relationship with his boyfriend, seeing Tracy lose her job brought an unexpected satisfaction. Watching all her hard work disintegrate felt like a fitting consequence for her actions. I wanted her to truly experience the anguish of pouring her heart and soul into something, only for it to be mercilessly destroyed by someone else's choices. When Tracy was let go from her job, the divorce documents had already been prepared, and my attorney sent them over to her without delay. Upon receiving the papers, she called me in a panic, pleading for me not to dismantle everything we had worked so hard to build together. I reminded her that she had set this ruinous course into motion the moment she entertained thoughts of infidelity, undermining the very foundation of our relationship. I made it clear that I was the one who had exposed the video that completely shattered her months of dedication with her director. I had anticipated her reaction, knowing it would be filled with denial and deflection, and she certainly didn't disappoint. She accused me of being envious and resenting her passion, claiming I was somehow incapable of pursuing my own dreams. I couldn't help but chuckle at her accusations because I saw through her facade all too clearly. I decided to end the call, recognizing that there was no point in engaging further. 2 weeks ago, she signed the divorce papers, and now I find myself updating this as a newly divorced individual. While the experience is undeniably painful, I do feel a sense of relief knowing that she is no longer a part of my life. I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to everyone who offered their comments and support during this tumultuous time. That was an interesting chapter in my life, but it's time to move on. Now, let's transition into another captivating tale. Stay tuned as I share yet another personal experience that's sure to grab your attention. So, here we go. My girlfriend cheated on me because I couldn't afford a $3,000 designer bag. I'm 27 years old, and I was in a relationship with a woman I'll call Luna, who is 26. We had been dating for over 2 years when I stumbled upon a scene that would shatter my world. This all unfolded about a week ago during an office party. After indulging in a few drinks, a coworker and I decided to step outside for some fresh air. As we were chatting, something caught our eye, a shiny blue Mercedes-Benz Cabriolet parked about 2 buildings away in front of a hotel. Initially, we thought it was just an empty, fancy car, so we walked closer to admire its sleek design. However, as we approached it, we noticed the car was shaking oddly, and it dawned on us that a couple was engaged in an intimate moment inside. Stopping in our tracks, we couldn't help but laugh at the thought of interrupting someone's private moment. We stayed nearby for a smoke, but then something happened that sent a chill down my spine. A woman emerged from the car, adjusting her hair and teasing the man inside. My heart sank when I recognized her. It was my girlfriend, Luna. She had been kissing some guy in the Mercedes. What started as amusement quickly morphed into sheer heartache. My coworker, who knew Luna, stood there in shock as we watched her walk into the hotel, hand in hand with this stranger. I had never seen him before. He was clearly someone new in her life. To provide a bit of background, I work as a sales executive at a multinational company, while Luna and I had actually crossed paths a long time ago when I was part-time working as a cashier at a supermarket, and she was a store assistant. We had formed a friendship back then, though it was purely platonic since I was busy with college, and she didn't express any romantic interest. Luna had to drop out of school to help support her family and had been juggling 2 jobs since she was 19. I admired her dedication immensely. About a year ago, I unexpectedly ran into her again at that same supermarket where we had first met. She had been promoted to floor supervisor, and it had been 5 long years since we last saw each other. We decided to catch up over coffee like old friends. During our chat, I casually asked if she was in a relationship, to which she responded with a playful gesture that made it seem like I was asking her out. Since I was single at the time, I mentioned that I wouldn't mind taking her out again. We exchanged numbers, and the following weekend, we went for drinks. Over time, our relationship blossomed, leading us to the 2-year mark that I had sincerely hoped would continue on a positive note. But little did I know, a betrayal of this magnitude was lurking just around the corner. Throughout our relationship, I consistently encouraged her to complete her college education. I held the belief that her lack of a degree was significantly hindering her career potential. She often explained her reasoning for not pursuing her studies, stating that she couldn't afford college because she had to support her parents financially. Initially, I felt a deep sense of sympathy for her situation. It was clear that she was sacrificing her own career aspirations for the sake of her family's well-being. However, as time went on, I learned that she was only sending about 25% of her income to her parents. This revelation was surprising, especially considering she had a stable job at the supermarket. Despite her consistent employment, she struggled with juggling multiple evening jobs, frequently moving from one role to another. From waitress to bartender, she was trying to explore different avenues. Given that she was managing 2 jobs, I suggested she think about quitting one of them and enrolling in college. My reasoning was straightforward. I believed that the income from one steady job could sufficiently cover her living expenses and still allow her to support her family. However, she was strongly opposed to the idea of returning to college. She firmly stated that the earnings from a single job wouldn't be enough for her survival. I respected her perspective and decided not to push the matter further. The underlying truth was that I genuinely wanted her to complete her education and secure a stable daytime job. I had been planning to propose to her in a few months, but her busy work schedule was becoming a significant barrier to us settling down together. My feelings for her were genuine, and I was committed to our relationship. I tried to broach the subject of marriage and starting a family within a year, emphasizing how critical it was for her to stabilize her career first. She brushed off these conversations, maintaining that her marriage aspirations and her career goals were separate issues. Though she expressed her own desire to marry me within a year, she insisted on keeping her hectic work life intact. She seemed to perceive a typical daytime job as monotonous, preferring the excitement that came with switching between various positions. Looking back, I'm uncertain if I should have recognized this as a red flag, but I clearly overlooked it. Luna didn't subscribe to the idea of saving money. Instead, she spent her entire paycheck on her lifestyle. Like many, she had a strong passion for designer clothing, bags, and shoes. To an outsider, without knowing her profession or background, one might easily assume she came from a wealthy family based on her appearance. Initially, I did not consider this to be a problem. I offered her suggestions on saving, but she countered that her hard work justified the indulgence in expensive items. Moreover, she funded her lavish preferences entirely with her own earnings. About a year ago, Luna approached me with the request to move in together. She explained that her friend, with whom she had been sharing an apartment, was relocating to a different city. Since Luna couldn't afford the rent on her own, she proposed that we cohabitate. I was genuinely excited at the prospect of taking our relationship to a more serious level. I assured her that she wouldn't need to worry about contributing financially since I was already covering the rent and other household expenses myself. I even suggested she save her earnings for her personal use. Money wasn't a significant concern for me, and aside from an increase in food costs, her moving in did not greatly affect my financial situation. So I was perfectly okay with it. Fast forward 6 months, I received a promotion at work, which was a proud moment for me considering the effort I had put in. To celebrate this achievement, I took Luna out for a romantic candlelit dinner at an upscale restaurant. She was genuinely thrilled to experience the service at this premium establishment, especially given her background of working as a waitress or bartender in similar venues. During the dinner, she expressed her excitement and joked that I was raising her expectations. I wanted to treat her well, as any man would for his girlfriend or fiancée. However, I had no idea that I was unintentionally setting the stage for future complications. After that dinner date, Luna began to subtly drop hints that I should treat her to similar outings on a regular basis, essentially every weekend. What surprised me was her preference for fancier dining options rather than casual places like Subway or McDonald's. For the next few months, I obliged her requests, thinking that her enthusiasm for these upscale experiences would eventually fade. Throughout our relationship, I consistently encouraged her to complete her college education. I held the belief that her lack of a degree was significantly hindering her career potential. She often explained her reasoning for not pursuing her studies, stating that she couldn't afford college because she had to support her parents financially. Initially, I felt a deep sense of sympathy for her situation. It was clear that she was sacrificing her own career aspirations for the sake of her family's well-being. However, as time went on, I learned that she was only sending about 25% of her income to her parents. This revelation was surprising, especially considering she had a stable job at the supermarket. Despite her consistent employment, she struggled with juggling multiple evening jobs, frequently moving from one role to another. From waitress to bartender, she was trying to explore different avenues. Given that she was managing 2 jobs, I suggested she think about quitting one of them and enrolling in college. My reasoning was straightforward. I believed that the income from one steady job could sufficiently cover her living expenses and still allow her to support her family. However, she was strongly opposed to the idea of returning to college. She firmly stated that the earnings from a single job wouldn't be enough for her survival. I respected her perspective and decided not to push the matter further. The underlying truth was that I genuinely wanted her to complete her education and secure a stable daytime job. I had been planning to propose to her in a few months, but her busy work schedule was becoming a significant barrier to us settling down together. My feelings for her were genuine, and I was committed to our relationship. I tried to broach the subject of marriage and starting a family within a year, emphasizing how critical it was for her to stabilize her career first. She brushed off these conversations, maintaining that her marriage aspirations and her career goals were separate issues. Though she expressed her own desire to marry me within a year, she insisted on keeping her hectic work life intact. She seemed to perceive a typical daytime job as monotonous, preferring the excitement that came with switching between various positions. Looking back, I'm uncertain if I should have recognized this as a red flag, but I clearly overlooked it. Luna didn't subscribe to the idea of saving money. Instead, she spent her entire paycheck on her lifestyle. Like many, she had a strong passion for designer clothing, bags, and shoes. To an outsider, without knowing her profession or background, one might easily assume she came from a wealthy family based on her appearance. Initially, I did not consider this to be a problem. I offered her suggestions on saving, but she countered that her hard work justified the indulgence in expensive items. Moreover, she funded her lavish preferences entirely with her own earnings. About a year ago, Luna approached me with the request to move in together. She explained that her friend, with whom she had been sharing an apartment, was relocating to a different city. Since Luna couldn't afford the rent on her own, she proposed that we cohabitate. I was genuinely excited at the prospect of taking our relationship to a more serious level. I assured her that she wouldn't need to worry about contributing financially since I was already covering the rent and other household expenses myself. I even suggested she save her earnings for her personal use. Money wasn't a significant concern for me, and aside from an increase in food costs, her moving in did not greatly affect my financial situation. So I was perfectly okay with it. Fast forward 6 months, I received a promotion at work, which was a proud moment for me considering the effort I had put in. To celebrate this achievement, I took Luna out for a romantic candlelit dinner at an upscale restaurant. She was genuinely thrilled to experience the service at this premium establishment, especially given her background of working as a waitress or bartender in similar venues. During the dinner, she expressed her excitement and joked that I was raising her expectations. I wanted to treat her well, as any man would for his girlfriend or fiancée. However, I had no idea that I was unintentionally setting the stage for future complications. After that dinner date, Luna began to subtly drop hints that I should treat her to similar outings on a regular basis, essentially every weekend. What surprised me was her preference for fancier dining options rather than casual places like Subway or McDonald's. For the next few months, I obliged her requests, thinking that her enthusiasm for these upscale experiences would eventually fade. Her dining out habit remained as strong as ever, but she developed a surprising new inclination for expensive gifts. It wasn't just on special occasions anymore. She began to casually request presents from me, often of the high-end variety, things like stylish dresses from Zara or the latest iPhones. It all came to a head last month when her birthday rolled around. Out of curiosity, I asked her what she wanted this year, expecting something reasonable. Instead, she handed me a wish list that shocked me, a $3,000 Chanel bag. I couldn't help but chuckle, thinking surely she was joking. But her reaction showed me I was way off base. She took offense and accused me of judging her based on her choice of gift. I quickly assured her that was not the case. I genuinely thought it was a light-hearted request, but $3,000 for a bag just seemed beyond comprehension. Instead of recognizing that her request was a bit extreme, she tried to justify it. Her argument was that after I had received a substantial raise from my recent promotion, I should be in a position to treat her to something extravagant. This was baffling to me. She also brought up the fact that throughout our 2 years of dating, I hadn't given her any significant gifts, which hit me like a ton of bricks. While it was true I hadn't showered her with expensive items, I had been paying for all our household expenses for the past year. Even before she moved in, I'd been covering our outings, lunches, dinners, everything. I had been mindful of her lower income and intentionally didn't let her chip in, thinking it was a fair arrangement. But somehow, she managed to twist the narrative and make me feel guilty for not meeting her expectations. She argued that spending $3,000 was merely equivalent to 10 days of my salary. She pointed out that some people freely spend an entire month's pay on their significant others. While I admitted that her math wasn't wrong, I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea of spending that much on a single bag. I understood that many individuals splurge on high-priced items like $50,000 Nikes or $10,000 Gucci belts, but for me, the value simply wasn't there. In an attempt to be constructive, I suggested that instead of a designer bag, maybe she could use that money to develop some vocational skills that would benefit her career. I realized that it might come off as mundane, but to me, that seemed like a much more worthwhile way to spend $3,000. Her response was a roll of the eyes accompanied by a label of stinginess. It was clear she was upset, but she didn't openly express her frustration. Following the bag debacle, I noticed a shift in her demeanor. She seemed bothered, but I assumed it was a temporary feeling. As the eve of her birthday approached, I took a half day off from work to prepare a surprise for her. I had carefully organized everything: flowers, candles, cake, and a couple of those Zara dresses she had been eyeing. I waited for her arrival until midnight, which was her usual time after work. However, following our argument, she had been getting home later than before. I tried reaching out by phone to check on her, but she didn't answer. About an hour later, she sent me a message explaining that her colleagues had thrown her a surprise party, and she would be spending the night with them. The disappointment hit hard. I had spent the entire evening preparing my surprise, and now it felt overshadowed. Of course, I couldn't blame her since I hadn't told her about my plans, but the feeling of unease lingered. It stung that she was celebrating her birthday without inviting me, especially after all the effort I had put in. Feeling exhausted and a bit defeated, I eventually dozed off on the couch. The next morning, I awoke to find Luna stumbling through the door, clearly intoxicated from the party. She seemed genuinely pleased to see the surprise I'd arranged in our home and cuddled up to me while apologizing for being absent the entire night. I explained how I had taken time off work to celebrate her birthday together, but she didn't seem all that enthusiastic about my plan. She casually mentioned she had to go to work since she hadn't taken a day off. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. I had been so excited about making the day special for her, and now it seemed to slip away. I suggested she could call in sick to spend the day with me, but she outright declined. Seeing her brush aside my feelings stung even more, but I kept my mouth shut. It was her birthday, after all, and I didn't want to ruin her day. I watched as she moved through her routine, showering, getting dressed, and preparing to leave for work. I had hoped for more, but it felt like my efforts were dismissed, and I was left to grapple with my disappointment in silence. Before she left, I wrapped my arms around her in a farewell hug and decided to ask if there was any chance she might reconsider staying back for the day. She firmly declined, stating that she wanted to avoid having a dull day on her birthday. This response struck me as puzzling, so I pressed for clarification. Luna elaborated that spending her special day lounging at home with a glass of wine simply wasn't her style. Being the outgoing person she was, she craved a vibrant celebration outdoors, surrounded by excitement and energy. I attempted to offer a solution by suggesting we could hit up a local resort or embark on a fun day trip to nearby attractions, thinking this might appeal to her adventurous spirit. However, she seemed unimpressed, quickly brushing off my ideas with a remark that my workday seemed far more thrilling than any plans I had laid out. Frustration flared within me as I realized that I had lost my patience with the conversation, ultimately allowing her to leave without fully understanding her desires. In hindsight, I recognized that I should have put more thought into planning something that aligned with Luna's extroverted and party-loving nature. Instead of opting for a simple, intimate celebration meant for just the two of us, it would have been better to organize a bigger birthday bash that would showcase her vivacious personality. Days passed, and I found myself trying to mend the rift I had caused, promising her that I would make the next birthday truly memorable. She then mentioned that only a trip to Hawaii would satisfy her expectations for a delightful celebration, leaving me speechless. I offered nothing but a tight-lipped smile in response, feeling a wave of concern wash over me. Her high standards raised a red flag, especially considering I had never even set foot outside of our state. Lately, I had begun to pay closer attention to her behavior, and it didn't take long before I noticed that something felt off. Coincidentally, just last week, I caught sight of Luna in an intimate moment with another man inside a luxurious car. They then entered a five-star hotel together, and I felt an uncontrollable urge to follow them inside. Just as I was about to act on that impulse, a colleague stopped me, warning that my sneaking around could lead to getting kicked out of the hotel lobby. He suggested we return to our office party, but my heart wasn't in it. Instead, I chose to linger in front of the hotel, anxiously waiting for them to re-emerge. Eventually, my friend insisted we leave, pointing out that there was a good chance they were spending the night together, and waiting there indefinitely wasn't practical. Reluctantly, I climbed into his car, feeling overwhelmed by a rush of distress that left me struggling to catch my breath. In my emotional state, I felt compelled to take drastic measures. I packed all of Luna's belongings and set them outside our apartment. The whirlwind of emotions made it difficult to pinpoint when I finally succumbed to sleep. The next thing I knew, I was jolted awake by the sound of Luna's loud voice demanding to know what had happened to her things. I stated plainly that she was free to return to her wealthy boyfriend with whom she had spent the previous night. Her reaction was infuriating. She dismissed my feelings and casually replied that it was admirable I had figured it out. Anger surged within me, and I shouted, demanding to know how long this had been going on. Luna offered a nonchalant response, claiming there was no need for drama, stating she sought out affluent men because I was too frugal to buy her a Chanel bag. Her eyes were cold, devoid of any remorse as she collected her items and walked out the door. It was astonishing to witness how some people could stoop so low for the sake of material gain. At that moment, I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of what my next steps would be. Nevertheless, I was resolute in my decision not to let Luna walk all over me. Update *. Hello everyone, it has been over 6 months since my previous post, and I feel it's time to share an update. There hasn't been much to report until recently. In my last entry, I mentioned feelings of wanting revenge for the betrayal. However, as life often does, things took a turn a few weeks after the breakup when my company assigned me to a project in Seattle for a month. That change of scenery turned out to be incredibly therapeutic. The new surroundings allowed me to process my feelings and move on more swiftly than I expected. Upon returning, while I wouldn't say that I had completely wiped her from my mind, I had made significant strides in moving forward. I took the important step of blocking Luna on all social media platforms, ensuring I wouldn't be tempted to check in on her life or activities. Just a week ago, Luna made an unexpected visit to my home, appearing utterly miserable. By then, my anger had subsided, so I let her come inside, curious as to why she had shown up after all this time. She broke down and offered apologies, expressing remorse for jeopardizing our relationship over materialistic desires. While I appreciated her acknowledgement, I had already moved on and encouraged her to do the same. She went on to express that I was the only individual in her life who had genuinely cared for her. According to her, everyone else had simply viewed her as someone to fulfill their physical desires. In response to this assertion, I had to remind her that labeling others as users seemed unjust, especially considering that she had happily accepted expensive gifts from those same people. Luna quickly countered my point, stating that those lavish items never held any real value for her. What she truly yearned for was a committed partner, someone with whom she could settle down and build a life. After hustling for the past decade, she felt ready for stability and a more meaningful relationship. I wished her the best of luck in finding the man who could meet her needs because, quite frankly, I no longer saw myself as that person. This admission prompted her to plead for another chance, revealing her current state of financial ruin. She explained that she had been crashing on a friend's couch due to her inability to afford her own place. I pointed out that she had 2 jobs, which should have been more than enough to support a basic living situation. This revelation left me stunned, as she had always conveyed during our 2-year relationship that she was consistently busy working. Luna then opened up about her social life, disclosing that she often went out with friends every evening. She had engaged with men at bars and participated in intimate encounters with them in exchange for gifts and money. While I won't go into the specific details of what she shared, the gravity of her words left me utterly speechless and grappling with an overwhelming sense of betrayal. She continued explaining that, as she approached her 30s, balancing her daytime job with her nightlife activities had become increasingly challenging. Luna expressed a sincere desire to settle down, to embrace a more conventional life, and she begged me not to judge her actions. She asked me to reconsider taking her back, making promises about how she would be a devoted wife. I maintained that I held no judgment against her, but I simply couldn't overlook the truth that she had deceived me for 2 long years, lied, and had been unfaithful. Those were things I would never be able to forget. At one point, she held my hand and began to cry, laying bare her financial struggles and desperate need for assistance. However, I firmly communicated to her that I couldn't revive our relationship and requested that she respect my decision to be left alone. The weight of her confession left me in a state of disarray as I realized the full extent of our relationship. I had loved someone who had, all along, been involved with other men. I felt utterly foolish for having cared for her over those years. Later, I confided in a close friend, the same one who had been with me when I witnessed Luna's intimacy in that car. He suggested that I should get an STD test, given that I had been with her for so long while she had been with others. Initially, I hesitated because I hadn't experienced any symptoms, but my friend insisted that symptoms could take years to show up, urging me to err on the side of caution. I ended up scheduling the test for the next day, hoping for a clean outcome. Days later, I was relieved to find out that my STD test results came back clean. Thank goodness for that. Today, while passing by the supermarket where I first met Luna, or where she used to work, an inexplicable urge compelled me to step inside. Wandering through the food aisle, I bumped into one of the long-serving employees there, who happened to be a former coworker from my own days at the store. He approached me and, knowing my past relationship with Luna, asked if she was still working there, as he couldn't spot her around. Curious, I asked him what had happened to her. He informed me that Luna had actually been let go from her job 3 months ago. Naturally, I inquired about the reason for her dismissal. He claimed not to have the full details but was willing to share what he knew. I began to recount my breakup with Luna, and it was at that moment that he spilled the truth. According to him, Luna had recently been caught on camera making advances toward wealthy-looking customers. Security had been keeping an eye on her activities, but until that point, nothing definitive had been recorded, which made it difficult for them to take any action. Apparently, it was a common sight for her to be leaving the supermarket in the car of some male customer after her shift. However, 3 months ago, she was caught engaging in intimate activities with a customer in a secluded corner of the store. Initially, the store issued her a warning due to her long tenure with the company, but it was only a matter of time before her actions caught up with her. The reality of the situation hit hard. I was left reeling as pieces of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a side of Luna I had never truly understood. A few days later, that same customer came back into the store and created quite a scene. He was adamant that Luna had stolen money from his wallet during her visit to his house the previous night. The accusation was serious enough that the management felt they had no choice but to take decisive action against her, which ultimately led to her termination from her job. I couldn't help but wonder about my friend's experiences with Luna, especially since he had worked alongside her for so many years. I asked him if he had ever found her behavior suspicious, expecting he might have noticed something off about her. To my surprise, he expressed his shock at the revelation of her behavior. He explained that, throughout their time working together, Luna had always seemed to be just another one of the team. She blended in seamlessly with her coworkers and friends, and nobody ever suspected she had a hidden side to her personality. As he continued, it became clear that Luna's reputation had taken a massive hit within their professional community. It had deteriorated to the extent that no one wanted to vouch for her or even offer her a job anymore. Word had spread, and it was evident that she had been using men to fund her lavish lifestyle. I felt compelled to share this information as a cautionary tale for others. It's important for people to be aware of the potential risks when dating someone new. In my case, I felt fortunate that my involvement with Luna only lasted 2 years. I've heard countless stories about partners who managed to hide their true selves for many years, even after marriage, which is a frightening thought. Luckily, I managed to extricate myself from the situation before it escalated into something more serious. It's crucial to be diligent and really get to know someone before diving into a long-term commitment. Meeting their parents and getting to know their circle of friends can provide invaluable insights that could prevent future heartache.